Thank you all so much for coming to our speaker series event, our last speaker series event planned for this 2017-2018 school year. I am so excited to announce our guest, Hector Aristizábal, who I asked about the pronunciation earlier. I hope I did that well. Who is joining us all the way from Colombia. He is a theater activist. He uses theater as a mode of communication to work with communities all around the world to address issues like conflict, peace building. And he's been with us at Manzanita for a couple days, working with a lot of students, a lot of whom are here. Thank you, 7th graders, represent. And he'll be sharing some of his story and telling you a bit about the work that he does. So, without further ado,
thank you.
Hector.
All right. Wow, thank you so much. I never know what I'm going to talk about because I'm always waiting to see who is there. And I was planning to talk about these guys to your parents. But now that they are here, I will have to change the topic completely. I work with conflict, and I really prefer to be in Afghanistan right now than to be in Manzanita. That was a joke, a bad one. That was I'm used to working with people who have been killing each other for different reasons in places like Colombia, like Northern Ireland, Afghanistan, Ukraine, etc. So it's very relieving to be in a place like Manzanita, where literally there are human beings trying to shift paradigms, trying to do something in a very different way, while struggling with the old paradigm that breeds inside of them all day long. And especially when we're trying something new and we receive the pressures from the outside asking us, what is it that you're doing? We feel threatened and we feel fear, and we immediately fall into the old paradigm. And I can tell you this because that's what the kids are showing me. They're saying, well, you know what, some things sound like this, but look like this. Some things look like this, but feel like this. And I think that conflict is that symptom that tells us that something is not working, and also that something needs to change, that something is no longer serving everybody and therefore needs to change. And the problem is that most human beings are afraid of conflict, and we don't know what to do with it. And in many places like my country, Colombia, conflict has been associated with violence. Like when we have conflict, then we need to use or exercise violence against somebody else, another group, etc. And we know what happened. History is completely plagued with examples of human beings killing other human beings. In some places because they have different beliefs, in other places because they have different ideologies or ways to think about life, in other places because of the color of their skin. It seems like human beings are always outrifying somebody else, transforming somebody else into a monster in order to justify why we kill them. So let me tell you where I come from and how I experienced this throughout my life. I'm going to invite you to imagine that there is a threshold here through which we enter the world. And there is another threshold here through which we exit. So life and death. And what happens in between is what we call life. And in between, my experience has been, not only my personal experience, but working with other people, is that we go through different moments that are pivotal, that are significant, that really shift who we are and changes our life, sometimes in dramatic ways, sometimes in beautiful ways. Like the day you guys came into the world, you changed your partner's lives forever. So that's one moment like that. So I was born in Medellin. Medellin is the second largest city in Colombia. It's a city of 4 million people. And I was born in a very poor family. So like we all, when we're born, there are lots of things that are predetermined for us, like our genetic makeup and whether we will have access to certain things or not, or how we will get access to them. But as I was growing up, my city was becoming the most violent city in the world for different reasons. One was that we have a very strong guerrilla movement, not gorillas, guerrilla movement, in which were people that were very influenced by Russia and China and Cuba and what we call the socialist and communist revolutions. So every time that there was a revolution somewhere in the world, Colombia had a group of people that believed we are like China, we need to do the revolution like the Chinese, or we are like Russia, or we are like Cuba. So every time there was a movement in Colombia of people that took weapons in order to fight against the government and try to change the conditions of the country. So that generates a lot of violence. But we also have the mafia. You all have heard about Colombia and the cocaine cartels and Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar went to the same school that I went to 10 years before me. He wasn't there for too long. He preferred to steal and, well, I mean, yeah, he wasn't very interested in education. But each one of these men became so wealthy that they had their own armies. So imagine kids that were young, 15, 14, 16, 18 years old with weapons and motorcycles. Kawasaki's was at that time in the 80s, who were being paid to kill people. And to kill not only the enemies of the drug traffickers, but they killed intellectuals, they killed artists, etc. We had days in which 25 to 40 kids were killed every day. Imagine that. LA is a very violent place, but we killed 5 kids every week. And it's not in the news unless those 5 kids were killed in the same place. Maybe it would be in the news. But so Medellin was becoming that kind of place, and I was witnessing all of my friends, the kids that I played soccer with, and then the kids I went to school with, and then the young men and women who I went to college with disappearing, either being tortured, killed, or working for the main armed groups, which were the guerrilla, the mafia, and then we had the paramilitaries. I'm going to name a lot of things and you're going to get very confused, but it's just men with weapons. People with weapons who are killing somebody else at the orders of someone, or because of their ideology, or because of their pain. Because some people also enter into these groups because of their pain, and I will tell you a little bit more about that later, because of the work that I'm doing. So I saw many of my friends disappear. When I was 22, the government of President Turbay Ayala felt that the country was invaded by communists, and he declared something called the Statute of the Security Statute. And basically the army began to take intellectuals, artists, and anyone suspicious of being a thinking being, a person who could think, as subversive. So I was a student at the Antioquia University. I was studying psychology. They came to my house. They raided the house. One of my brothers had a book from the guerrilla, and they immediately assumed I was a guerrilla person that was training my brother and 3 kids that were camping with him. And they took me and they tortured me. I was very lucky that I survived, because there were people in Colombia at that time, international delegates, as witness to the electoral process. So people that I never met, that I never knew who they were in Colombia. They were told there was a student that had been taken by the army from the house and that was disappeared, that no one knew about him. So they came to the place where I was being tortured. I know because that day they put us down the office where they received these people, and we could hardly breathe. It was under the earth, and the 6 of us were put there, and there was a Colombian African man who was bleeding to death. Sorry, I'm telling you terrible stories, but it's a story, all right? And I remember he told us, please call my family. They didn't have a phone, so call this place and tell them that I'm here. We forgot his phone number, but I never forgot him. I don't know what happened to him. But I was let go because they couldn't prove anything. My brother, who had a machete because he was camping, was thrown in prison for four months. In prison, he met guerrilla fighters, and he became a guerrilla. So he went to the guerrilla for 4 years. He was a very noble man, very quiet, beautiful man. But then he also felt that it was not for him. He left the guerrilla, and then later in 1998, he was kidnapped, horribly tortured, and killed by the paramilitary groups. So the paramilitaries are the ultra-right, the people that do the dirty work for the army and the dirty work for the big landlords and for the government. Are you following me with all these groups? Good. Okay. I'm just I don't want you to go, what was he talking about? So a mess. I was talking about a mess. So it was 1989. I had a beautiful mentor. He was a medical doctor and an epidemiologist. So he studied why illnesses get spread. And he was considered dangerous because he will go to a town and tell the people in the town, look, why do I give you pills for the diarrhea if the problem is the water? So we need to clean the water. You need to demand from the government to clean the water. Besides, you have 3 rivers here, but they are being polluted. So because of that, they thought he was a revolutionary and a communist, and they killed him. I was with him and another doctor, Leonardo Betancourt, and we were at the funeral of a union leader. Colombia has done a genocide of union leaders. That's how democratic we are. It's the only country who has done that. And so a kid came, he shot, we threw ourselves to the floor, and Hector Abad had 2 shots, and Leonardo ran. The kid followed Leonardo into the place where we had the wake, the cadaver, and killed him. So that day I said, why am I doing? Why am I waiting to be killed? And I don't even know by who, because we didn't know by who. So I decided to leave the country. It took me 2 years. I sold my parents' house, the only thing that they ever had. I sold it for $5,000, took half of the money, and ended up in Dubuque, Iowa. Do you know where Dubuque, Iowa is? I felt like I was like in a European movie set. And all these fields of corn and I don't know what else. And these people, some of them had never seen a Latino alive. And I mean, outside of the television set, you know. It's like you, and I remember I came to the United States not because I wanted to come here. I had to confess to you, this was the last place on the earth that I wanted to be. You were the evil empire, the imperialists. You were the people who supported dictatorships everywhere in the world, especially in South America. You were the people that I blame for 9/11, 1973, which is Salvador Allende in Chile. Remember? He was someone who was elected president, and imagine the White House being bombed by the army, etc. But when I came here, I met Americans, or US citizens, and they're very different than the government. Sometimes that happens, you know. So we are both responsible, because I don't think we're not, but we're also victims of systems. And I also found that most Americans had no idea about what was going on in the world in their name, and especially in the name of their military. And the other thing is that regardless of your ideology, love has no ideology. So I fell in love with an American woman 3 days after I arrived. She taught me English, I taught her Spanish, and other things we taught each other. But I told him, Iowa is a beautiful place to die, but not to live. There's nothing here. There's nothing here I can do. So we took her Dodge Lada, and we were taken by AAA, and they canceled our AAA because we used it so many times. And we ended up in San Diego. We lived there for 3 months, and then I did a conference in imagine my broken English right now. There, 4 months of English. Love English, but it was English, giving a conference about the drug traffickers in Colombia. So that's how I met that social worker in LA, and I came to LA. And I started doing, I was a psychologist in Colombia, and I did theater, but then here I had to go back to school, and I became an MFT and continued doing theater. So anyway, that's a little bit of that story. There were lots of changes in my life. So now I am here. I am realizing that most people had no idea what the U.S. foreign policy looked like in other countries. So I started trying to educate. I wasn't very good at that because I was very vociferous, and some people say, "Ooh, who invited this guy here? If you don't like this country, go back to your country," and etc. Things like that, which were valuable for many people because they were feeling offended, and maybe I was very offensive because it was the rage and the anger that I felt and the frustration. But slowly I was understanding that there are people everywhere trying to change the conditions of their lives and trying to do the best they can. So I went back to school. I started working with immigrants, and I started working with different people, and then I was blessed with a son, Gabo. Gabo was born. So as you know, when your kid is going to be born, you have 9 months to change the world. 9 months. I mean, it's like, wow, what have I been doing? And then you start changing the world. And I wasn't very successful. We went to work with Iraq. We started torturing people, all kinds of things. But I was very happy with my son. And then my youngest brother, Hernan Darío, contracted AIDS in Colombia and had a terrible, terrible death. He was like 45 kilos. He was taller than me. He lost his hair, his eyes were out. But I went with my son and I did a video with him. I asked him to tell me his story, and it was like the second place documentary in Colombia. But he was able to tell me his life. And I realized that as a gay man, he was gay, he suffered a lot, the bigotry of the country. I sometimes was uncomfortable around him. At the same time, he inspired me to become a therapist. I think it was my love and my desire to understand who he was that led me to study psychology. And then my daughter came, Camila. And okay, I haven't changed the world, but I'm very happy you're here. Maybe together we can do it. And then my brother was kidnapped, tortured, and killed. So when that happened, I must confess this, don't be scared, I became a killer. I became a terrorist. I started killing people in my nightmares that were very colorful. I was a combination of Rambo, Schwarzenegger, all these characters. I mean, I was doing horrible things, but I also was having horrible fantasies. But as my son said one day that I said this in public, he got up and said, "Dad, stop lying." And he was crying. And I said, "Gabo, what's going on? You cry more than we do when we watch TV. You even cry in the advertisement. So you can't even kill a cockroach. What are you talking about?" I said, "Gabo, I haven't done any harm to anybody because I have done it. I have been able to process it in different ways, with theater and with poetry and with my fantasies and with therapy and with rituals and with ayahuasca and with different things. I have been processing this pain." But then I started working with, after my brother died of AIDS, I started working with AIDS and HIV here, mostly with the Latino population, as a way to try to understand what my brother went through. And I did that for 7 years. And then I started working with hospice, becoming a midwife into death. It's very interesting. I forgot about, I told you about a threshold and completely forgot about that. But anyway, I go back to it. When you work with people as a midwife into death, they'll teach you that, because some of them come and come back and go and come back, they tell me that when you get there, whatever that is, they don't ask you if you were a good child or a good mother or a good father or a good husband or a good sibling, a good sister or brother, or a good citizen. Apparently they ask you, did you live your life? Did you become yourself? And what I learned from a lot of these people is that most of us are not living our lives. We're living a script that was given to us by society, family, circumstances, etc., etc. And it was beautiful I learned a lot about life working with death. It's like, what is the meaning of life? And of course, I realized the meaning of life for me was not hating people, even in fantasy, or giving that to my children. So I was really, and I was working with end of life and working with people from all over the world who didn't know what to do with their loved ones after they were dead. I was also processing my own grief because of the death of my siblings, my brothers. So I was in that. And then I was also working with theater. I was a therapist, but I used more theater as a therapist than in theater. I I really got very bored of the theater scene. It was like work, and 3 people come, and what is this for? It didn't find any meaning to me. So I started doing theater with gang members that were most of my clients, with people dying, telling their stories, with AIDS and HIV, so we could share our stories with the community about what it is to live with AIDS and HIV in America, in the United States and in LA. So all my plays were done mostly with non-actors, which is a lie because we're all actors. Not in TV and not in, but we all the time we're acting, and that's what we're doing this week. These guys have been acting this week. And I hope that on Friday we will show you something, we'll share with you something. So I was doing that as a way to try to use, I didn't know at the time what was perhaps my medicine. So I'm going to come back here where I didn't tell you at the beginning, is that when we come to the world, wherever we come from, I don't know, we bring gifts. Every single child comes to the world carrying gifts. And they are gifts that we bring to the world, to give the world. The Greeks call it the daimon. Yeah? And when you don't honor your daimon, it becomes a demon. The Christians taught us a lot about that. Is that you don't honor that, it becomes an energy that really can destroy you and many others. The Romans call it the genius. That we are all genius, not just the people with 134, I don't know how much it is, that the IQ of, or the Native Americans call it the medicine, is that we all carry a medicine that the world needs. And we came here to give it to the world. So in life, we're always trying to remember what that is, because we forget. Because before we are born, we know all of this, and apparently before we're born, we go through the river Late. That's the name they gave it. And then we forget everything, and boom, we are here. So all of life is trying to remember, why is it that I'm here? And the idea is that all these things that happen to us in our lives are there to help wake up the gift, the diamond, the medicine. So some people are born with diseases, and they have to deal with that their whole lives. I don't know how they do it. But so that's their medicine. Some people deal with mental health issues, with psychotic episodes, with drugs and addictions, and war. It has been very close to me. And the question is, when we are going through those difficult moments, or molestation, or rape, or AIDS and HIV, when we're going through that, something in us wakes up and helps us not only survive, but hopefully help us overcome. So we're not just victims of rape or victims of this or that, but we are people whose psyche learns to live with that experience. And if we develop a medicine for that, we can give it to others. We can share it with others. So the gift is not just about being brilliant on stage or being a great singer. No, it's a medicine that we're giving to the world, and the world heals with that. So I'm going to show you how. But you don't understand this. And you also need, even though you have the gift, someone has to see it. And it's not your dad or your mom. I'm sorry. Your mom can say, you are a great actor, Sonny. Yeah, you are my mom. No, you have to see. Maybe your mom can do that for somebody else. Or your dad can do that for somebody else. But, and teachers, and I know in this school that's a commitment, is that teachers had that impossible task to bless. Because when you see a gift in someone, you had to tell them. And they had to see you as having that gift, and they say, wow. So for example, I work at Berendo School here in LA, and we're very close to the Lakers. And a lot of the kids were African-American kids, 3 times my size, which is not very difficult. And they have muscles in them. They look at me like, hey, what's up, Hector? And I say, man, you are a good basketball player. And they say, thank you, man. You're just my therapist, you know? You're just my shrink. And I said, yeah, and I don't know anything about basketball. Nothing. I don't dream. What is that? So I went to the Lakers, and I said, look, I had these kids nearby. I know you guys have to do a lot of community service because of, you know. And so you come, you can please come, see the kids play basketball, tell them, give them a word, whatever it is, and please come twice. They come back in 4 months, and I will give you 6 hours. Did I say that in public? No, that was not. Anyway, so they came, and the day they came, the school, no one could. Everybody would, whoa, who is that? Who is that? And this guy would come. I would say the kids start playing. They would get all nervous, fight. But one day, this guy tell me, bring me a tie. And I said, I don't wear ties. I said, bring me something. So I got something, and he tied this kid's arm in a way and told the kid, you have to throw the ball 3 hours a day. 2 weeks later, the man said, he doesn't let the neighbor sleep. He's constantly doing this because I don't know who told him. I said, you tell me he doesn't like to do anything, but that's his gift. So he's doing what he was told. So of course, when they came back 4 months later, this kid could throw the ball from the other basketball field into this field, into the thing. And then the guys were there like, man, look at that. I was like, what's going on? Do it again, kid. And they were seeing something I couldn't see because I don't play basketball, that this kid jumped, and when he jumped, there was like a stool there, and he jumped again. You know, he had a gift. And they were all fascinated. Because he did, I don't know how he did, he jumped and then he jumped again. But it takes someone who has the gift to see the gift. We cannot see it, and so the kid has to choose the mentor. It's not, I want to be a mentor to the kids here in Manzanita. No, the kids have to say, I like who you are. I like how you walk. I like your tattoos. I don't know, whatever it is. So that is what used to happen during initiation. The ancient people, the traditional communities used to be very conscious about this. So they had rites of passage, rituals of initiation around this age. Be careful. Okay, around this age, because your body is already growing, your hormones are all exploding, but mainly the question is, I'm no longer dad and mom's child. Who am I? Who am I in the world? And you need someone to say, you are a hunter. You are amazing at imitating birds. You are a weaver. You are, I don't know. Yeah? And if that blessing doesn't happen, then we curse them. I'm sorry, it's that simple. If you see a gift in a kid and you don't bless it, you curse them. Especially if you could have blessed it. The spirit on the child is waiting to be seen. Educare used to mean to lead it out. And the it is the resident spirit on each person. Instructare means to pack it in. And we live outside of here in a society that is packing in information in children without knowing who they are, so they reject it. So I'm very happy that you are all so brave and courageous to support this incredible experiment. This is a human experiment. It's doing terribly. Okay. No, it's a beautiful experiment that is going to be in lots of crisis, and it needs all of you. It needs all of you, and because that's a little bit of what's happening here. And the connection to nature is something that it took me many years to understand. I'm just starting to do that. So where am I? Can you help me? Where am I? I was talking about, this happens when you get older. I was talking about the gift. Okay. So let me just come back to the end and then we talk. Is that okay? Because I prefer to talk. So I am here, and all of a sudden my wife is a yoga instructor. She does Iyengar yoga, so we had to go to the Iyengar Institute in Pune. And we go there and we heard about this ashram, Osho ashram. You know about Osho? And we go there and she has a spiritual awakening and ends the relationship. And it's like I was incinerated and decapitated at once. No, and not because she was a bad person. She said, look, I'm feeling something I never felt before, and I had to leave this, and I hope you do it too. So she was very loving. But I saw her transform into a butterfly dancing into the light, and I became a worm. I could hardly move. And I was doing workshops. I would do the workshop, and people would bring me back to the ashram, and I was just desperately looking for her. But anyway, so what it did to me is that it really sank me into my pain, into my grief. Not just of losing the relationship, but because I can fall in love very easily. That's a good medicine too. But it was that it really showed me where I was, where my soul was. So she went into enlightenment and I went into endarkment. There are two ways. Some of us go there and some of us go. That's the soul's way. This is the spirit way, ascension and descent. And I think we all need to do both. This country is obsessed with light. And you don't find light in the light. You only find light in the darkness. And you don't become very spiritual after being material driven if you don't do this work, I think. I mean, these are ideas. But if you don't do the soul's work, there's no place to be grounded on the earth. And I'm sorry, we're all here. We all incarnated. We all wanted to come here to do something with our lives and to give our gifts and to give our medicine. So we had to do it. It's not easy, but it's a lot of pleasure too. It's more joyful than doing other things. So I divorced. It's very difficult. But love again and my children, etc. I was recuperating myself. I was doing more theater. And then Abu Ghraib came. Remember Abu Ghraib? You were not even in your mom's head. But Abu Ghraib was a moment in which in the Iraq war, American soldiers took photographs of themselves torturing Iraqi prisoners. And I was very outraged. And every time I see images of torture, I go back to the chamber of torture. But I was more outraged by the reaction of the country. Because there was a policy, and they tried to justify it by saying it was just a few bad apples. It was not who we are. And I said, no, this has been going on for too long. So I created a play called Night Wind, in which I tell my story and the story of my brother who was killed. And somehow I opened the nightmare of my personal life, one of the nightmares, and the world came in. I began to be invited to universities, conferences all over the country, then in other countries. And slowly I let go of my practice as a therapist and I started doing workshops, and then I started working in war zones and being invited back. And then I went into the wound with my medicine. That was the play, that was theater, that was working with communities, that was creating spaces of imagination. So together we can imagine what can we do with whatever it is. So I use theater as a laboratory to explore alternatives with people about the issues in their lives that they don't know how to resolve. So Friday we might show you a little play done by them, and just an excuse, or issues that they don't know how to resolve, and we want to see if you can. Okay? No, we want to invite you into an aesthetic conversation, not an ideological conversation. It's aesthetic conversation. And theater allows us to come on stage and be on the shoes of the other character. So it's the most empathic and humanizing form that I know. So it's part of the medicine that I discovered. And because of that, so I started traveling the world for the last 12 years. I let go of my practice as a therapist, which I enjoyed tremendously, but I felt that I needed to do something else. So something changed in my life, but this time I made the decision, not in a very coherent, rational way. It was not my ego saying, okay, I'm going to do this play, and then, no, it just happened. I trust that I needed to do something else than working with families and groups and communities and prisoners, etc. And I didn't know exactly how I was going to survive. I have not made even 1/3 of what I made as a therapist, but I have been now in 52 countries, over 100 cities, and people think I'm rich. And I say, yes, I have everything I need. And then my kids live with my ex-wife for many years, and now they're in college. And 3 years ago, the peace talk began in Colombia. This is the 7th time, the 7th attempt. But this time something happened. It's the first time in history that during a peace conversation they invite the victims. And the victims went to Havana and told the guerrilla and the government, please, what are you doing? You're doing structural changes in Colombia? You think that you 40 people are going to change Colombia? All you need to do is to stop killing each other. And each one of the victims told the army people and the guerrilla people, look, what you did to me, I don't desire that on you or anyone else. Please stop killing. And when I saw that, when the peace conversation got humanized, I decided I had to go back to Colombia. 6 months ago, I moved back, and now I'm going to show you, when it's ready, a little bit of what I'm doing. I'm just going to show you a minute of an experiment that is, we invite victims and we invite is combatants that, yes, that a few months ago were killing each other, a few years ago were killing each other, and we invite other people interested to do this kind of thing that I'm going to explain to you in a moment. But let's see just some images. So we're using deep ecology, theater, and ritual.
Libertad, soy libre, libre por fin.
And it's in nature. ¡Bienvenido al mundo!
Agradezco a todos, a la naturaleza, a la tierra, al agua, al fuego, y especialmente a ustedes pueblo.
All right, just a little, a little taste. No, these people were people who are enemies. These people were people, but I'm going to tell my part. So there are military people. The guy that you saw, I don't know if you saw him, he lost his eyes, and he has shrapnel all over his body. He was a policeman in charge of taking the coca crabs out of the earth. And he knew that for most peasants, that's the only way of survival. Yay!
Was the guy that lost his eyes with the blindfold on?
Not the one with the it was a black man, and he had a lot of scars in his face. It was very fast, but anyway, he's a beautiful man, and he sings. He's an amazing singer. But when he was doing this, the guerrilla attacked them, and when they were escaping, they put bombs all over. He was with one of his partners. The partner blew into pieces. He lost his eyes, and now he's here hugging a man from the guerrilla. Yeah, whose story is also horrendous. And there was a woman from the paramilitaries who killed my brother. But when I heard her story, these stories are too harsh. You don't need to hear more terrible stories, but we have done to each other things that are unimaginable, that we cannot speak. So what we do is we do theater, we create images, and we go into Mother Nature. So this is the last part, is that if our pain is the pain of the mother, we are able to do what we're doing to each other because we're doing it to the mother. We transform this living being that is the earth into a planet, an object, a thing that we can cut, rape, ransack, exploit, transform into objects that we don't need, and then transform into a garbage disposal, into a sewage system. You know that there will be more plastic than fishes in the ocean if we continue doing what we're doing. I'm doing it, I'm sorry. But if you go back to nature, and you guys here are with the most amazing teacher, which is the earth. And that rock, oh wow, it makes so much noise at night. Have you heard it? During the day you don't hear it, but that rock is telling us so many things. And so right now I have been like an uprooted tree for many, many years, flying all over the world. But now I'm feeling roots coming out of the soles of my feet and sucking the sap and of the earth. And that really reconnects. I'm really reconnecting to myself, to my soul, to the earth, and to each other. I'm going to leave it there. There's lots of details and lots of things, but I would love if we can converse. If any of these things got your attention, there is no wrong question or comment, or is that okay? If we engage, that's more or less part of what I wanted to share. So let's converse. Yes, please.
How do you get these very hardened and painful people to open up? What is the beginning step?
Great. I use theater. What I do is I start always with games. Always. It doesn't matter who I'm with. Executives, union leaders from different unions, gang members, Crips and Bloods and Maras Salvatruchas on 18th Street, prisoners, in prison, I start doing games. The games connect us to our bodies, to our energy, to each other, make us fully present. You cannot play a game if you are not fully present. And then activates spontaneity and activates the heart and the soul. I start with games, then we create images that are very innocent, and we each see what we see in the image are places of no judgment. There is no expert, everybody is an expert in their lives. And then we start playing with our stories. Or I also do a lot of console circle, because in circle you hold an ancient form from the native people in which we see each other and we hear each other and we are all at the same level. And if we drop to the heart, once a person speaks from the heart, it's amazing. You have a fountain of beauty just pouring out of the place. But I don't know if it's me. All I do is to hold the space. There is something else that takes place. What it is, I don't know, spirit, the earth, magic, healing. We all want to heal, all of us. I think it's the biggest problem in the world. A society that doesn't heal, kill. If we don't heal, we continue killing. Talk about what's happening in Israel and Palestine. Talk about what's happening in this country. We had one of the bloodiest wars in history, and between brothers, the South and the North. We're brothers. Thousands of people killed. How we mourn them? How we mourn slavery? How we mourn Vietnam, Korea, the over 100 wars that our army has been in? I don't think we have. So when the psyche feels that there is an opportunity for healing, it opens up. It happens in therapy too. And we are all trying to heal. So the psyche continues recreating the conditions for the healing, and if it doesn't happen, then there is more damage. There is more, we marry the same person with a different last name. And that happened. And then that in the same relationship. It's like, why would, because we need to heal. I don't know that answer, but I think each one has a medicine. If you sin, and it will connect to people. Yeah, Dali.
When you have that opened and everybody goes back to where they've come from, how do you sustain and then thrive?
Wonderful question. Now this program is to accompany the Truth Commission in Colombia. I just given you a little taste of what we're going to open. It's not one Pandora's box. So what do we do with it? What I want to do is move the soil. So when the Truth Commission comes and they do their hearings and all these stories start showing up, there are some people that have experienced this and hopefully other things who can help hold the container. Then hopefully they will continue working in the community. So we are connecting to organizations, and there is not a lot of money for this. No, we as a country gave billions of dollars to Colombia to do the war. Obama promised $500 million. Mr. Trump has not approved it yet. So we have not given one penny to the peace process, but we have given billions of dollars to war. But it's up to us to demand those kinds of things. But there are organizations, and there are people always working in peace. There are people doing the work just with their hearts, mostly victims. The most generous people in the world that I met are victims. The most peaceful ex-combatants. The people who are against the war are all people who watch wars through TV and ideologically think, let's go to war. And sorry, my dears, the day you see someone voting for war, tell them, I will believe you when you put an uniform and send your little kids to war. It's very easy to vote for war when the poor are the ones killing each other. When you will never, ever suffer that. You will not say go to war because you will know what it means. So if you vote for war, then go, kill people, and find that it's not that easy. The worst problem of the U.S. military today, suicide. 2 years ago, 38 people were killing themselves. Neon Panetta said, we don't know what to do. PTSD, they call it. But it was mostly the people who came back, not without arms, without one eye, without legs, not those. They are fighting for life. The ones who even didn't go to combat, but witness but they know what they were participating. This country keeps sending young men and women to war, and it's atrocious. And we're paying for it. I think it creates a lot of pain in the culture. I forgot the question, but anyway, that's it. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about being a young person in grade school or high school, and the way way the world is right now? Feelings are really up, and something that I've experienced a lot lately in my life is understanding that I really can feel any way that I want to feel, but I really can rise above how I feel and choose to do the right thing. I think I would just love to hear you talk about the difference between acting on how you feel, or just feeling how you feel, but still acting in a way that takes you to the next level of maturity or to the level of understanding the conflict in the bigger picture.
Wow. Easy question, huh? I don't have the answer. I can tell you what I have witnessed in me and in the young people that I work with. You're next. Good. You're next. But let me answer the question first, okay? Just give me a second. Is that okay? I will answer her, and then you got the question. That's where we need the container, the society. When you are young and you have all this energy bursting out of it, your sexuality, your hormones, as they call it here, but it's not just hormones, it's your spirit saying, see me. And then you start putting makeup, you start dressing in a certain way, you walk in a certain way, you put your pants, you try to find out who you belong to, and what's up, homie, and you go to all kinds of things. You want to be seen. And it's not just the feeling, it's that thing inside that is bursting out of us, wanting to be blessed. And if you don't have a container, if you don't have a village, you become very dangerous. And the diamond becomes a demon. The energy of creativity becomes destruction. A lot of these kids that I have met in the inner city doing lots of damage are kids with lots of pain. And then they make a mistake, and boom, we immediately filled our prisons with it because it's a business here. So I went to prison and I met amazing people. I met elders, real elders in prison, 25-year-olds. Not because they were here, because I haven't seen many elders in the White House. Have you? Elder is a wise, do you know what an elder is? What is it? Well, anything. What do you think it is? Beautiful. They have experienced a lot and they know what it is. Yeah. Because you can be an older. Lots of elders in the world today, not elders. How do you know the difference? An older is just decrepit. It just gets old and old. But an elder is full of youth. And an elder is wise. And an elder doesn't need to shower every day. All the hairs are coming. Some kids sometimes ask me, how do I know my grandma is an elder or an older? And I said, very simple. Very simple. Is your grandma or your grandpa weird? Because if they are weird, they're elders. That means they only look like themselves. If they're like everybody else, wake them up. Wake them up somehow. They say, Grandpa, I really need your wisdom. Anyway, and that elder is in the youth, trying to come out and wanting to be seen. And that's why they color themselves, and that's why they do all kinds of things, tattoos and piercing and burns and cuts, and because they want someone to see them. They are waiting for all of us to say, I see you. I see you, brother. But if the one who sees you is the homeboy, that's a cult of death. That's not a cult of life. And unfortunately, those are the ones seeing the youth. And that's why they end up in prison, and they end up selling drugs and doing all kinds of things. Sex. It's a spiritual search. Addiction is a spiritual search. The point that the spirit is not in the bone or the water, the container. The spirit is in them. I don't know if that helps at all. But if you don't connect to your gift, that energy is incredibly powerful and destructive. I've seen it in drive-by shootings. I have seen it in the jumping scenarios. I've seen Mara Salvatruchas. You come to the center and we hit you for a minute, 7 or 8 with everything. I've seen blood, saliva, mucus, and at the end, you are a homie. You are a homie. And it's incredibly intense, that energy. We need to channel that energy as a society. We need to honor that energy. This society is completely obsessed with youth, with youthfulness, with looking young. And we're willing to do whatever for that, but we hate our young. We hate our young people. It's a paradox. My friend, go for it.
How did you know that your brother was kidnapped? Did you see him?
Yes, he disappeared. They took him from the street, and then we couldn't find him. We had pictures of him in the newspaper asking, and then he was thrown in a ditch on a highway. And a truck driver saw him and saw the picture in the newspaper and called the family. And I was here in the United States, so my brother and my sister who went to see the body called me, and that's how I heard that he had been killed. And then I saw him. And I took pictures of him. I ordered an autopsy. Don't ask me why. I took pictures of the autopsy, of his intestines, his brains. I was crazy. My sister and my brother saw his feet and said, that's him. They didn't want to see anything else. And then I showed those pictures, for example, to Dianne Feinstein in Congress. And I said, look, this is what you are financing with Plan Colombia, which is all this $12 billion for war. And she said, how do you know that is in Colombia, and how do you know that's not an actor? And I said to her, that's my brother. And her ovaries came here. She felt very uncomfortable. I'm sorry to say. Erase that, delete that part. And so it was like, that anyway. Yes?
How old was he when he got kidnapped?
He was 35 years old. And a beautiful man. Yes?
I know that I really appreciate the transformation you went through and the pain that it took for you to get there. And I know as being an ex-drug addict and that my life had to get pretty desperate and a near death. For me to go through the process of finding the degree of commitment that I have to my transformation. And a lot of the kids in our country, our society is so comfortable. We have so much comfort and distraction and hypnosis. I would love to be able to see as much transformation and kids to be able to grasp the concepts and to see and to be able to find their geniuses without having to go through the pain that we've had to go through.
I wish my kids would have to suffer. But my son is already suffering in a relationship that is really abusive towards him, but he has to go through it. I just try to hold him in the best light, listen to him. My daughter is struggling with college, not with the grades. She does very good, so she got a scholarship, and fortunately, because it would be very difficult for us. But it's not happy because you were supposed to go to high school to get high, but not with drugs, as our kids are getting high. You know that colleges is the place of the biggest consumption of cocaine and alcohol in this country? College campuses. Because if you're not getting high in spirit, you get high in some kind of way. If you are not being seen, and I think what you're talking about is the fact that in this moment, we cannot wait for a big savior or a big ideology or a big economic system to save us from the collapse. Because everywhere we look is collapsing. Sorry to tell you this, but you probably have seen it, yeah? The earth systems, the social institutions, now it's lies everywhere, and you don't know what to believe, etc. But the beautiful thing about it is that everywhere you look, it has to change. And everywhere you look needs your gifts. And we are all trying to reweave this social fabric with each one of our gifts. So that's my feeling, is that some of us had to go through hell to get there. Some people might be able to get there in a different way. I really believe so. I really think that there are many different ways. I don't tell anyone go and seek pain and seek tragedy. I wasn't, certainly. But I would live my life the same way exactly if I was asked to do it. I would hate to see my brothers being killed and all of that, but I think my life is, I tell kids, read all the books in the world, all of them that you can, but read the book of your life. That's the most important. I was never told that in college. My life was not important. My life was ordinary and stupid. And it was friends here who convinced me. They didn't know I had been tortured until my brother was killed and tortured. And then I said, yeah, and he was tortured with me. And I said, what? I said, yeah, but nothing happened. And then I did a play about that. I opened my wound, whatever that is, and something very beautiful happened. So we all have gifts. How they get awakened is different for each person, but each person is going through this. Some very quietly. Please be scared of those who are very quietly. I also told that to my son, because there had been a big, one of those horrible killings in schools. Do you notice that every time there is one of those killings, or the people who went postal, used to be called, that they are very quiet? Everybody said, he was very quiet. He didn't talk to anybody. Be careful with those kids who are not processing, who no one knows, because there is a hell going through them, and they are not sharing it with nobody. I'm very happy with the ones who are symptomatic, I would say, because they force us to pay attention. Yeah.
When the Iraq War broke out, Chris Hedges, the journalist, wrote a wonderful book called War is the Force That Gives Us Meaning, and it's a play on love is the force that gives us meaning. And I'm just curious for your life, like when we're all trying to change this paradigm, what are the words you tell yourself? Do you have anything that, like a philosophy that you carry that you can...
Wow. I know love has saved me. In the moments, especially when I felt like killing, when I felt full of hatred and the desire for revenge, I would come home and I would look at my kids' eyes and it will melt. And then my love with the women that have been partners with me, that has been my temple. And I had to learn, because one of them finally said, look, it's like you go to war and I get wounded and all of that, and come home with all, and I make love, and then it's all healed. And I can go back the next day. I said, but you don't know what you live in me, what you live with me. You have to clean yourself. You have to find your own way. So meditation, dancing, we all need to learn to take care of ourselves too. And the worst the people to take care of themselves are those who teach others to take care of themselves. The worst. Look at social workers, or therapists, or teachers. Do you know how teachers look like? We need a lot of help in taking care of ourselves. We need the community. It's so beautiful to see so many parents here.
Can you tell us the story of the, well, you said that there was a story, because from the lady that was there, the story, that lady who killed your brother, you heard her story?
Yes.
If you remember the story, can you tell us the story?
That's so beautiful how she was. You never know what people are hearing. No, that's what they said, that speaking in public is the most dangerous thing in the world. It's the scariest thing statistically. And they say it's because the truth might come out. So, so you better have a horse by the door so you can run out. And okay, so this is what happened. One of the ladies at this was a paramilitary woman. The paramilitaries is an organization that kidnapped my brother and killed him. Not exactly her. I don't know who killed my brother, but she was in that organization. So I'm going to tell you her story because you asked for it. She was a student at a college, and she and 16 other women were invited to a party by another woman they didn't know was a recruiter. She was recruiting people for an organization. So they went there, lots of drinks, lots of drugs, very easy. And the next day, they were all asked to stand, and they were like, what is going on here? What kind of party is this? They were all given a file and asked to open the file. So she opened her file, and there was a picture of her 5-year-old girl and her mom. And each one opened, and there was their father, their husband, and then she was asked to make a phone call. And she said, "Mom, I hate you. I'm tired of you and the rest of the family. I don't want to raise my daughter. You have her. I'm going to live with a man that I'm in love with, and I'm not going back to the university." That's what she was forced to say, because they didn't want the family to believe that she had been kidnapped. And then they were informed, "You are now members of the paramilitaries." From those 17 women, 4 survived. Some committed suicide, some were killed in combat. And she survived 4 years, 6 months, and 4 days. She knows because she will have a diary. And now she's working with, so she told me, "I saw many people killed like your brother. And I thought they deserved it because they were guerrillas, because they were the enemy. Like some of us will say because they were Muslim, or because they were terrorists, or because they were Al-Qaeda or ISIS or whatever. No one deserves to be killed, none. No one in the world. Yes, some people are doing incredible damage. Our army is doing it too. In many places, terrorism looks like American airplanes for them, or Russian airplanes. I have been in Syria. Syria has been bombed by every country. It's awful. Aleppo is almost destroyed. It's a beautiful city, almost destroyed. I know this is very complex. It's not that simple. But killing, we have to stop it. Who is benefiting from killing? Who is benefiting from war? Nobody. And so I'm glad that there are places like this in which we are planting very different seeds and asking for very different energies. All right, I don't want to end in there. I want to call the medicine. So this is another way that I can go work with youth. I learned to do this from a mentor called Michael Mead, and I really love. So tomorrow we're going to do this with the students. Oh, I don't know about the mic. Is that okay? Ooh, anyway, let me move it a little bit. All right, so this is another medicine that I really, really like. And so they say that there is no village without a drum. There is no living being without a drum. And there are many ways to call spirit. One of those ways, one of the oldest ways, is drumming. Another way is through stories. And what is stored in stories is the wisdom of the people that were here before us, meaning the ancestors. So this story comes from Guatemala. And they say that once upon a time, a woman had a baby. And when the baby was born, the midwife, because in those times it was a woman who had children and helped other women to have children, who received the children, she noticed that the baby was born with a gift. And in this case, it was a gourd to carry water with and a green piece of clothing. So the woman said, wow, wow. But she also noticed that the family was very busy looking if the baby had 5 fingers and 5 toes, if the eyes were the color of the grandmother, and the nose of the grandfather, and things like that. So she decided to keep the gift and to hide it for a while. And the kid was given a name. He was called Poder. Do you know what Poder means? Power, meaning the capacity to do things. So Poder grew like every other child in that village. There was no manzanita, so he went to other schools. And he was there, and he was growing up, and he was learning how to mischief and how to climb trees and things like that until he became what we now call an adolescent, meaning that moment in life in which you had to push things one way and pull things the other way in order to figure out who you are. So when Poder was an adolescent, the midwife said, it's time for Poder to learn about his gift. So she looked for him and she said, Poder, huh? Poder, come. What? But he knew that older people knew more things than young people. So he came down from the tree and said, what? She said, listen, when you were born with a gift. A gift? A gift, yes. And if you want to know what your gift is, tomorrow you have to climb that tall rock that is down there, and there you will find your gift. So the next day, Poder went to that tall rock and he climbed it. And when he got there, it was dark. And when he got there, he was surrounded by people. And the people said, follow us. So he followed them. And they entered a cave. And in that cave, he could not see very well, but they said, look down. And then he saw his gift, which was, what was the gift? A green piece of clothing and a gourd. So he said, wow, wow. I was expecting a Nintendo 54, 55, or a cell phone, or perhaps a soccer ball, or a basketball. He said, well, what am I supposed to do with that? And the elder said, good question. This is the gift that rainmakers are born with. You are going to be a rainmaker. And Poder said, wow. Wow, because he knew how important rainmakers were in that village, because there was drought in that village all the time. Do you know the story? Drought. So there was a drought. So Poder went down to the village and he learned the dances and the prayers and the things that you had to learn in order to make rain. And then, what do you think happened? What happened? What is happening in your imagination? He practiced. What else? It didn't rain. He was and didn't rain. What else? It did rain, and then he created a company and put the water into glass and became very rich. What else? What else happened? Huh? Others came. Okay, etc., etc. In this case, in this village, Poder had a younger brother, and the younger brother said, "What's going on with Poder? He seemed very happy and very proud lately." So he followed him. He saw him climb the rock. He followed him up there, and then from the distance, he saw him dancing in the clouds. I said, wow, wow. So he went back to the cave, and he noticed that hanging from the ceiling, there were green, red, and black clothes. So do you think he went and asked what they were for? And find out that the green was to create rain, the red was to create lots of rain, and the black, the one with all the power and all the colors in it, was only to be used by the wrath of God. Which one he picked? I'm glad. I hope you picked the black. So he picked the black, and he went outside, and he began to imitate his brother. And then down in the village, it was not rain that was falling. It was a tsunami. It was a vendaval. It was a storm over another storm, and the houses were being destroyed. Some people were drowning. So the elder said, what is going on? The rainmaker said, who is doing this? They look around, they found Poder's younger brother, and they said, stop. Stop right there. What are you doing? And Poder's younger brother said, I'm sorry, I'm just playing. I don't know. Look down. Look what you have done. And he saw the destruction. And he said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So the elders got together, and they decided that Poder and his younger brother would have to go down to the village, help rebuild the village. And then after a while, they were both going to get very sick, and they both were going to die. And in this Mayan story, that's what happened. What do you think? You are all like, you promised to end the talk in a very different way, and you're all, what happened? Huh? Yes.
Why was that Poder also supposed to die?
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe it was a relative. Maybe he's supposed to maybe he's supposed to guard the clothes.
Interesting to guard his gift. What else? What comes to you?
Everybody has to die.
Everybody has to die. I'm sorry, that's true. In case you didn't get the memo, it's going to happen. The problem is not that. Is everybody going to leave? And yes.
Maybe if you have a gift, you have a responsibility for the gift and whatever you can do with it.
Wow. All right. Stories are beautiful because you can interpret them in all kinds of ways. They are like symbolic maps. And the idea is that we each see ourselves in different moments in the story. But I told this story after Columbine. Remember Columbine? That first huge, horrible killing in a school. And I was doing, as a therapist, I was doing crisis intervention. So we went there, and I was looking for a story, and I found this story. So always, my kids, you know kids, how they are our laboratory. So I told this story to Gabo, and Gabo cried. I said, I hate that story. Dad, don't tell that story. I said, but Gabo, why? That's how the Mayans told the story, because they knew if a village didn't see all the gifts and the kids, trouble was going to happen, and everybody was going to have to pay. Not just the ones we sent to prison, everybody, the families and everybody. No, but I don't like that story. And he knew, because I couldn't find another story, that I was going to tell the story. So one day he said, Dad, that's not what happened. And I said, so what happened? So this is what Gabo said. So Poder and his younger brother went down, and they began to help people rebuild the village. And then people noticed what they haven't seen before. They noticed that Poder's younger brother knew a lot about trees. He seemed to know what trees were good to create roofs, and what trees were good to create wood floors. And he even knew what trees were good to make drums with. And they said, wow, wow. And they realized that they haven't seen him because he was kind of withdrawn, kind of depressed, especially after the grandfather, who was a great carpenter, had died. So they said, we better get together again in circle. Let's go to Manzanita. Listen to the rock. Call the parents. Maybe a Colombian will come and tell a Mayan story with a Colombian accent while playing an African drum. Because it's a kind of multicultural thing. And that's what my son said. And if you don't believe me, look around. Okay. So that's another medicine. It's an old medicine. And stories. When we did that, we were doing fixer-ups. We were buying these houses, so we were always in construction. And last Friday, my ex-wife's apartment caught fire. It's very funny. It's very weird. So we lost everything. That maybe it's time for her to let go of the material stuff. I don't know what the message is, but in this time, my son was very conscious about things and he loves stories. So I like that he shifted the story, because every time I told this story rarely. But why? But stories are very wise. And I like to tell stories to people and to kids, and especially to young people, because they identify in different moments in the story, and that's how you enter the story. I don't know how much time do we have. I have no idea. Where are we? 5 minutes? Oh, 10 minutes. Okay, I don't know. Whatever you guys want, but 6 minutes. All right. Just final comments or anything. Usually, what I do is I hear what reactions there are to the story. Maybe let's do that for 2 minutes or 3. Yes, about the story. Like, what resonated with you in the story?
Yeah. Okay. Well, what resonated with me in the story, I'm listening through the ears of a dad who has a 13-year-old son who is on fire. You know, so it was very reassuring to me, and it gave me a place to stand and listen.
Wonderful.
Thank you for this.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you. Anyone else? Any moment or image in the story that caught your attention?
Well, adding to that, also with a 13-year-old son who's on fire.
Wonderful.
A question I kind of had earlier is wondering, I mean, not only to this story that you've just told, which is beautiful, and that we all find that when kids are out there and don't get that attention maybe from the parents or the community or, you know, a larger family, things can go astray.
Yeah.
But do you see any commonality to the people that you've dealt with and had maybe success with, and where and what time in their lives this happens, and anything? Is there a commonality to, like, God, if this just happened, or what if, you know, I had this person in my life, or if that didn't happen? Anything you speak to with that?
Well, traditional Aboriginal societies knew this was going to happen, and I love how they do it. It's like they live the psyche out in rituals. They design sophisticated rituals for the kids to go through the ordeal. And I don't know if you know the steps. The first step is they take the child from the parental hut, from the parents, and physically. And sometimes they get kidnapped by people with masks in the night. And they scream and they scream, and the women cry, but it's the ankle, but because the mask has the same belly of the ankle or something. And it smells like the ankle, but it's a creature, and takes them. So usually it happens to the boys on groups and to the girls when they begin the menstruation. So the girls are taken to a hollow tree, to a hole in the ground, like the womb, and they are taught what it is to be a woman in that community, but especially not only what community you belong to, but who are you? What are your skills, your gifts, your talents that make you a unique woman? For the boys, it's in groups. And then they go, that's the first thing, they take you out. The second one is the ordeal. And they are very different. I was in Tanzania in a community where you had to face a lion, because they are surrounded by lions. But you don't face it with a machine gun or a gun, you face it with a spear. And people in this community have lots of scars, and they are seen as beautiful, because there are signs that the lion touch you and didn't kill you, and some kids get killed. Because they know when the hunters are out, lions can come in if they don't find game, and the young people have to defend. So it's part also their environment. But notice, for them, it's not, oh, those lions, let's kill all of them. No, they are beings, and they are gods even, so that's part of their initiation, etc. I mean, there are millions. And then the third part, I think, is the most important, and the one that we're missing in our culture, paradoxically, is the celebration. Is that once the kids come back and they look wild, the community celebrates now that a child had died symbolically, and the adult, the elder-to-be, has been born. And it's marked in the body. You see African people, they have scars. It's a burn. It's not like they're cows and we're no. This is a sign that I went through it. In Australia, they knock one tooth with that. So every man that is a man have. I don't know if you have seen the Aboriginals. In other places, circumcision, and so a woman will not touch you if you're not circumcised, regardless of what age you are, etc. And there are some controversial things, like what happened with women in some 80 million women in the world. But they need to change it, not us. They have to change it. In our society, I think we are constantly going through the first and second stage. My torture, I later understood, they took me from my society to my family. They put me through an ordeal that they wanted to destroy me, not to make me a man. But no one was there when I came out, except to see how screwed up I was. And yes, I was lucky to go to therapy, but what they never saw is what was born in me, what helped me survive, which was imagination in my case, and the fact that I became a character. I wasn't me. When the torturer was hitting me and electrocuted me and all of doing the waterboarding, etc., I was somebody else. I was in a story. And I also left my body, which is very common, especially in rape victims and all kinds of victims, is one way to survive. The problem is you need to reintegrate. Most people don't do it. The porn industry is full of that. Women who have left their bodies. I'm sorry, sometimes I'm telling things, but you guys will process this, because they're going to be exposed to all of these things, but now they can process it with you adults. So anyway, so the third part is that people here go to prison and they are criminals for the rest of their lives. How come? How come? I met people in prison that had done less things that I have. And I'm not a killer or anything, but I've driven drunk sometimes, and I wasn't caught. They did, etc. So it's horrible to be in a society that we that we label people for whatever they do, even if we had done it too. So those 3 moments, and I think each kid is unique. I will go to you in a moment. Each kid has a way of learning. Some are body. Some inject things, cut things, taste things, eat too much, don't eat. Anorexia is a body kind of way of being initiated. So we have to be looking at them, and if we don't understand it, which is the most possible, we need a village. We need the teachers here. We need other people to say, you know what, your kid is a military strategist. I want to kill him. No, he is. I cannot see that. I would not want to see that. Your kid is a religious person. Is a spirit. I want to be spiritual, but etc. So someone has to see them. Our job as parents, I think, is to provide them with a community in which someone loves your kid so much that sees the gift in the kid, and that will save him. Hopefully. I mean, some people come here and have to leave early. That's the way the soul is. I don't know if that helps, but and also I like that it's not your responsibility alone. Your soul, your child's spirit is not your job. It's somebody else's. Your job is to love them unconditionally, whether they are, wherever they are. You have to love them. Here, and then I don't know, you will give you the voice, but it's good. Should we get to him next? Dale.
Okay. What happened to your parents? Did your parents get killed, or
That's beautiful.
Did they die in peace, or did they just
That's beautiful. So my parents suffer a lot because of this. I brought them to the United States. You know what? My son was born, and then my brother died of AIDS. And I think because my son was alive, because I brought my parents to the United States. And then my daughter was born, and my other brother was killed. And I think that's what kept my parents alive, is that life and death, you know. My father died 2 years ago. He had a heart attack. And my mom, I just celebrated her 90 years. She's 90 years old. So I did a party and invited lots of people she didn't know. She got sick that day, so we did it in her house, which is very small. And everybody came, and I said, we're going to celebrate her 90 years, not just today. So we put pictures of all her, and I asked the aunts for stories. My mom is very quiet, but apparently she was the most coqueta of all the daughters. She took her sister's boyfriends. Anyway, we laughed because my mom is very frail, but it was funny to have fun with her life. Yeah, thank you, my dear, for asking.
You want me to talk loud too? Thanks, Hector. A couple things. You mentioned that you need the village, and to parents that you can't be the mentor. Mm-hmm. It's really the kids really react very negatively to that. Mm-hmm. They react very. They just can't take that. So I wanted to mention that, and that another part of that, which I don't think I've ever said out loud, but I've noticed it a few times, is that sometimes when I mentor a kid, I'm really intense. There's a lot of fire, and it's. I know I'm measured, and I know how that. You know what I mean? Some of you guys, and I know how it has to be, for me. And a lot of parents, the big job of as parents is you got to protect your kids. And sometimes when you encounter the mentor on the other end of your child's experience, you want to protect them from that. Oh, what did they say to you? Or like, and I've encountered that a few times where the parent doesn't understand what the mentoring looks like, and it makes them very anxious, and they want to protect their child, and they pull their child away from the mentor. I just want you to know that can come up for you when you encounter. But I think if you listen to your child all the way through the end of the story, usually at the end of the story, there's some powerful healing that the child's experiencing. But you got to be patient and listen all the way through. So I just wanted to say that about mentoring. But I wanted to also just notice something, and maybe it's already been mentioned by you or you've noticed it, but you talked about going to prison and being tortured, and so you got abducted, you got ordealed. And then you came out and it was like, oh, this guy's broken. You know, that was the.
Yeah.
And then you also told us a little earlier that when you made the play, all of a sudden everybody wanted to hear it, and you were getting all this applause. You came back and you got received back with the gift by the village. And I just so grateful that got to happen for you.
Thank you.
And it happened accidentally in some ways.
Yeah, it was not
but
like,
that
I'm
was the other
planning
end
this
of it.
thing.
That was the other end of it.
Yeah.
And and we've, for those of you that know, our expeditionary program that is something we're looking at across the school, but in the high school, they go out and we send them out with songs, and and they undergo ordeals. They experience really intense things on the land. They do solo overnights and they dig deep, and then we really welcome them back, and we're beginning to create the shape and the form, and we're listening for how that's supposed to unfold for kids. And it happens sometimes on a daily basis with a kid. They'll get pulled out of their class and they'll have a little ordeal, and then the next day they'll be seen and welcomed, and part of that is the mentoring, but just to acknowledge that that's ancestral. That's the hero with 1,000 faces that Joseph Campbell identified in every story in the world. It's that story of that leaving, the ordeal, and the return, and that gift that you bring back. So thank you for bringing the whole mythology
and gangs
to us.
are offering that.
Yeah.
Gangs
The pure
are offering
initiation.
the piercing and the celebration and the scene, but they are not seeing the gift. They are seeing another drug dealer or another. So it's not enough. But they are doing an archetypal function. They are playing something that is in us, that we need to be seen. We need to be seen by others. So our job is to provide that. There are great programs. In the United States, there is something called the School of Lost Borders, and they do ordeals of initiation, modern forms of ordeals of initiation. But the celebration is very important, because if they come back and, how was it? Good. Where did you go? It was very cold. And yeah, it's not enough. We need to celebrate, and as a community, you need to design that. I designed graduation for kids in middle and high schools, the kids that did not graduate on stage because they lacked two credits, whatever. And at the end, all the kids were saying, we prefer that graduation. That's to throw the toga and I don't know, whatever, and the rain, or I don't know how it is. But because what I did is that I asked the people to call, and I wrote stories with the families, and some of them didn't know how to read, so I read them. And we just created a little threshold with garden things, and then the kids would stand there, the homeboys would, and then, but all of a sudden they would start weeping. When they saw the mom said, I admired you, you came walking all the way from El Salvador, and I didn't want you to come, and you came, and I hated it, because I was living with somebody else. I haven't told you. I was afraid you were going to be killed, but you arrived here, and and you survived this, and you survived that, and wow. And once I asked the grandfather if we could call him in that moment, because I knew the grandfather was the most important person for this kid, was the only one who could say, what the hell are you doing? And the grandfather was in El Salvador. And then the kid was there, and then all of a sudden I bring the phone, and he hears his grandfather, and this kid begins to shake and weep. And of course, we all did. We all felt that joy of someone that he could see, that he could feel. And the grandfather said, I congratulate you, mijo. You graduated. And it was middle school. But for that family, that was huge. That was amazing. Anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate you listening to this, and thank you. See you tomorrow. Thank you.